just to wrap this all up, first of all, it's not, I haven't focused as much on the CISA role because to me, the technical aspects, it's not that it's easier technically, protecting elections from people that are professional hackers that are constantly trying to get into everything from water systems to election systems to hospital systems. I mean, these people this is what they do all day. So I'm not in any way diminishing, but the importance and the difficulty of it, I am pointing out though that it's technical, right? It's a red state, a blue state, they're both going to be equally impacted. They both are fertile ground, especially when you get down at the congressional level and even in local elections. So the reason why I focus so much on election interference, influence, and in particular foreign malign influence is because that's a lot trickier. And just the threats, I don't know where this comes from. I think it's the assessment for foreign threats to 22. If you just go through this, you start to see one of the first things that it points out, which I think you see to this day, is that part of their effort is largely, some of these operators are largely focused on amplifying what are already authentic beliefs in American politics, right? So these are people already believe these things, and one of the things they do is they just simply amplify things that people are already saying. So what's the risk there? If you say that the Iranians or the Russians or the Chinese are amplifying a message, some people take that to mean if I believe in something that I've stood for a long time, all of a sudden now I'm a Chinese agent or now I'm a Russian agent because I'm actually saying things on the campaign trail. And so you see it, for example, and it's also, Iran proposed helping nationalist groups inside the U.S., and Iranian officials advocated using covert social media to pit the extremist groups against each other, though more likely for use in 2024. This was written in 22. So obviously we're now in 24 and you see that. So that's just an effort to get Americans to fight and make us look weak internally. Then the other thing is that in October of 22, Twitter exposed 3 separate Iranian-based influence networks operating on the platform, generally supporting left-leaning U.S. politicians, including a range of House and Senate candidates. And according to industry reports, many exposed accounts espoused pro-Palestinian sentiments at the same time they expressed positive sentiments towards progressive candidates. Now you flip to the Russians. The Russians tried to denigrate the Democratic Party before the midterm and undermine confidence in the election, most likely to weaken U.S. support for Ukraine. So they denigrated the Democratic Party. They wanted, in particular, they amplified questions about whether U.S. aid to Ukraine would continue if the balance of power in Congress shifted. That's their intent there is not that they're Republicans, but their intent there was to denigrate the Democratic Party because it furthered their aim, and in the process also begin to influence our willingness to continue to be committed to helping Ukraine. You move on to others. So another one that the Russians, blaming multiculturalism and leftist ideals for ostensibly driving the U.S. into a crisis. There are a lot of people that actually hold that view, irrespective of what the Russians believe. They're just amplifying what somebody's probably been saying for 15 years. That doesn't make that person a Russian agent. It just makes it more difficult on this. And then there you have these unique cases, and this one in particular strikes home because I think I know who they're talking about. We assessed that Cuba attempted to undermine the electoral process of specific U.S. congressional politicians in 2022 that they perceive as hostile. They focused their operations aimed at denigrating specific U.S. candidates in Florida, although in an attempt to shape the impression of other politicians as well, because they view Cuban Americans in Miami as having an outsized influence on U.S. policy with regards to Cuba. So, and they also cultivated members of the U.S. media who held critical views of that member of Congress. So I probably know who they're talking about, but the point in it, obviously it was in 22, so where I happen to be on the ballot, among others. But the point being is that that's a very specific aim. My whole point in all of this is you have the example that I've used about the fake AI video. Okay, and that's almost, I don't say it's an easy question, but that's a more obvious one. It's clearly a fake video, and I think what we want to know is, do we have a formalized process to act very quickly to say, this thing is fake, even if we can't attribute it. You don't need to attribute it to be able, in the last days of a campaign, to at least protect the American people. And it has to be done in a way where the other side, who maybe hopes it's real, doesn't feel like you're tipping the scales in favor of your preferred candidate, right? To be blunt, let's say a video comes out that's fake about Trump, and the DNI comes out and says, this video is, it's not a fake, or let me do the reverse. Somebody comes out, a video that comes out about Biden, and the DNI, yourself, or whoever's in charge of coming out with this says, this video is a fake. I can see where people on the Trump side would say, well, that's just because you're trying to help Biden. It's probably a real video. And the reverse would be true in a different scenario. So it's a hard thing to do, but someone has to be in charge of coming forward and at least saying it's fake, even if we can't attribute it. That's the obvious questions. This one, the one I've just described about amplifying voices that are already out there in narratives, that's a lot tougher. I think the most we can say in that regard is, look, we know that these countries are doing this. They're not doing it because they're Democrats or Republican. It serves some purpose, influencing Cuba policy, influencing Ukraine policy, make America look chaotic, get groups to fight against each other. But this is what they're doing, and let people make judgments as to how they take these narratives. It's tough. I don't have an easy answer for how we fix it or what the process should look like in terms of notifying people. I just know that this is going to get far more complex. And I predict it won't just be about elections. It will actually become in real time, it already is, on policy debates that we're having here. Should we have tariffs? Should we ban TikTok? Should we, you name it, on a weekly basis, whatever the issue is here, I can see this becoming part of an influence even in our daily political debates. So we really need to get a handle on it. It's a tough one, but we really need to, because it's going to get far worse, far more sophisticated with many more players. And I think pose a grave danger at some point of turning into something that we haven't fully anticipated. So I hope we can continue to work on finding a way forward, because I'm sure they'll be talking about it at this dais after we're both gone. This will still be a factor.